And what is going on, everyone? And welcome to another special edition of Houston Texans football on Bleacher Report. I am one part of your show, Ruben Calvillo, the man right there, Harley Dugan. You can find him on YouTube at TheLead_Houston. Myself, just type in 713 Houston Sports. Guys, we want to shout out Bleacher Report allowing us to come on here. Always a big shout out to the man upstairs. Harley, we are not seven, but we are a few days away from the NFL Combine, which is Thursday. How are you feeling draft wise for this Houston Texans team?
I'm excited because at least at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
the Texans still have a first round pick
Yes.
with the 25th pick in the draft. So hopefully it stays that way. I don't want to trade away the pick.
Yeah.
I don't. Unless it's just like maybe on draft day that's different, but like
Okay.
going to draft day on the day of. Like, I
Mm.
want to know the Texans at least have a pick that day. Now, whatever happens that day is different, but I don't want to trade it, man. I really don't. I kind of want to stay pat, and I kind of want to see what the Texans are going to do at 25 with a first round pick, Nick Casario, D'Amico Ryans, and company.
Now, what Harley is referring to is the Stephon Diggs trade. The Houston
Yeah.
Texans, they traded out of the first round with the Minnesota Vikings. They then used the pick that they received to send to Buffalo to acquire Stephon Diggs. And unfortunately, we know how that ended. Stephon Diggs tearing his ACL in the middle of the season. Now he is a pending free agent. And me and Harley have both said we would rather move on from a Stephon Diggs reunion with the Houston Texans. You agree?
Yeah, for the most part, I'm not like fully there.
Okay.
But I wouldn't
I
mind the
wouldn't be
Texans bring.
surprised. I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I wouldn't be surprised either. But I wouldn't be upset if the Texans said, "Hey, we're gonna run it back with Stephon Diggs."
Mhm.
Wouldn't be entirely upset. He would be missing some OTAs.
Yeah.
Um, and 31 years old coming off an ACL, it could happen, and this happened many times with players. They're fine, but you know, it is what it is. I'm not fully there.
Mhm. Where would you grade last year's draft class? Because just think about this. If they would have stayed with their first round selection at that exact spot, number 23, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they traded with the Minnesota Vikings and they selected Brian Thomas Jr.
Mm.
And what did he do for them? Just 1,000 yards and a Pro Bowl nomination. If the Houston Texans would have got Brian Thomas Jr., Kamari Lassiter, and Kalen Bullock as their first, three draft selections, it would been insane.
Yeah,
What
it
could
would have
have been?
been. I mean, there when you also go down that rabbit hole, do you kind of go, well, does Lassiter still go down to you at in the second round? Does Kate,
Yeah,
like, so you're saying if we took Brian Thomas Jr. and the rest of the picks that we had
yeah.
followed suit, yeah, I would have loved it. I would love to have a Brian Thomas Jr. And at the same time, I was
Or maybe I'm being
extremely
greedy.
hyped. I mean, I was hyped about Stephon Diggs. I really was. And what
You
upset
were.
me more, it wasn't the trade that upset me. The restructuring of his contract upset me because we all knew that, oh, so he's only going to be here for 1 year.
And that's
And it
it.
was like, well, he'll be a free agent after. And we all said, so he'll be here for 1 year. So, and as of right now, that's what it's looking like. We never know. Maybe he returns, maybe he doesn't. But ultimately, the Houston Texans, I mean, they still had Kamari Lassiter uh,
Uh-huh.
from last year's draft, who should have been at least a Pro Bowl alternate or something. I thought Kamari Lassiter was one of the best rookie cornerbacks in the NFL last year, if not the best rookie cornerback in the NFL. Kalen Bullock definitely has to get some flowers his way. Just statistically, his numbers look good. Definitely can refine some of his techniques and stuff as a safety this offseason. Blake Fisher came in, played good enough, I would
Yeah.
say. He played okay. After that, Kate Stover. Kate Stover. Okay,
Mm,
fourth round tight end. We'll see.
yeah,
Maybe he's a backup. Maybe he's a future backup in this league. Then you had Jamal Hill, Jawar Jordan, and Solomon Bird. And then there was another one. I think it was a DT in the seventh round as well too.
was it Marcus
But
Harris?
Marcus Harris, and then the guard for Michigan, Ladarius Henderson.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah.
Now, none of the seventh round picks we really got to see. Solomon Bird, we saw like maybe a snap or two from him, a handful of snaps where he actually did okay in preseason. Jawar Jordan is just so confusing to me. It
A
just
lot of hype.
upsets me. It upsets me with Jawar Jordan because I'm just like, why they draft this guy if they weren't going to use him? Jamal Hill is still an interesting prospect, but ultimately the Texans did not really use him at all this year. So the grade, I'd say, given that you got Stephon Diggs in this with the draft picks, like, does that have to factor into the grade a little bit? I know it didn't turn out to be, what we wanted it to be, but
But
ultimately
if
I
it
was
would have
coming
turned
away
out
with
how
this.
we wanted, and
Mhm,
if he would have had 1,000 yards, we would have said, "Oh, absolutely." So
yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna say the hype was there.
Mhm.
The immediate hate that Stephon Diggs got, as soon as he became a Houston Texan, oh, he's gonna blow up your locker room. That didn't happen.
Never.
Yeah, man, I think it worked out, man. Maybe I'm being greedy. Maybe I'm being greedy. I love me some
Mhm.
Kamari Lassiter and some Kalen
Yes.
Bullock. Moving on to this year, no, I 100% agree. I don't want to see the Houston Texans trade their first round pick away. But however, I would say this: there has been a lot of chatter about, well, not chatter as far as rumors, but amongst the fans, trading that first round pick for a wide receiver on another team, someone like a Chris Olave, someone
Mhm.
like a Garrett Wilson, even though he just said that he loves his situation with the New York Jets as after they choose between him or Aaron Rodgers. Shout out to the Jets for making the right decision, and that being Garrett Wilson. Do you see the Houston Texans trading that first, maybe a second, for a wide receiver on the market?
Um, it's not a bad idea with Chris Olave. I really like the idea of Chris Olave.
United.
I just think he's had a lack of quarterback play. I really have with the New Orleans Saints, and so I think Olave is a solid option for this Texans team. Not willing to give up a first round pick though. A second round pick makes me think about it, but it still doesn't push me off the ledge yet. Anyone else, I think of Cooper Cup, even though he has a really riddled injury history,
Yeah.
and that's one of the reasons why the LA Rams kind of just not doing anything. They're trying to see what the market value is out there for a Cooper Cup trade, and I just don't necessarily see what team is going to give up a second round pick for Cooper Cup, even though he has high production. And you have Nick Cayley here, so that would be fun, but I don't know. I don't think there's any receivers on the trading block per se that really get the Texans to get pushed off the ledge into
Mhm.
trading if their first or even a second round pick. Garrett Wilson's going to be staying with the New York Jets, as you said. He wanted them. All he wanted was, is Aaron Rodgers staying? No. All right, bet I'm back on, guys.
Right.
That's all that was. So yeah, no, I don't see no one out there, man.
No, I have to agree. And I would rather, bet on youth here, especially knowing that in just a couple of seasons, well, starting this off season, I have to pay some of my premium players. Derek Stingley, we have to pay
Yep.
this offseason. We're going to make a probably, one of, if not the highest paid cornerback in the NFL. We have to worry about Will Anderson Jr. pretty soon, CJ Stroud pretty soon, Jalen Petrie this season, and so on and so forth. That's what happens when you draft well. So I would like the Houston Texans to, use their top three picks in the draft, take advantage of that rookie contract. And moving forward, man, it is the first round. Offense or defense, need or best player available. Give me If the Houston Texans were to draft a defensive player in the first round, what what position would you want that selection to be?
Easy defensive tackle.
Okay.
The easiest answer right there. I think it's so evident that what you saw with the Philadelphia Eagles and the formula to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, hell, the Houston Texans created some havoc defensively against the same Kansas City Chiefs team in the playoffs with the duo of Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter with Danico Autry
Mm.
playing DT. If you could inject that defensive tackle group with some youth and talent and a blue chip talent at that, D'Amico Ryans, who is known for not just improving linebackers play.
Mm.
Since D'Amico has got here, he has improved the play of the defensive tackles, and I would enjoy the Houston Texans to grab hopefully a Walter Nolan,
Mm.
Derek Harmon. Darius Alexander is an interesting
Okay.
one out of Toledo. Not sure if the Texans view him as high as maybe those other two, but I'm fully on board. I've been pounding on the table for a few years now for a DT to Houston, and I really would love that.
No, I 100% agree. And there is no youth, as you mentioned. You bring up Derek Harmon out of Oregon. Here's what Pro Football has to say about him. A Michigan State transfer, Harmon showcases an explosive first step and versatile pass rushing skills. In 2024 regular season, he held 39 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles for the Ducks. Harmon's impressive performance makes him a strong first round candidate for April's draft. Um, I would not mind a defensive tackle at all, Harley. And, just all the points that you mentioned are exactly mine as well. Get some youth there. And what we have seen, these defensive tackles, as soon as they enter this D'Amico Ryan system, they start playing some of their best football, right? You talk about Tim Soto Jr., all of a sudden he's getting a sack a game, a new watch every single sack. We started seeing, Mario Edwards Jr., playing with his tail off. D'Amico Ryans, he can bring the best football out of players and a rookie defensive tackle, man. I am there. Now, if it was on the offensive side, where would you want to see the Houston Texans spend that first round pick?
For sure, man, it's tough because I'm so torn between wide receiver and offensive line. I'm
Okay.
torn. And because I would love I still think you could improve the offensive line group via free agency. Still feel like there's some solid options out there, and maybe the Houston Texans, even if they improved via free agency for wide receiver, they could still draft themselves a top blue chip talent there. So, for the sake of the question, and just to have a premium position, why not? Let's go wide receiver.
I mean, it's it's something to talk about because the offensive line for the Houston Texans, even though being one of the highest paid units in the NFL, was
Mm,
one of the worst at protecting the
yeah.
quarterback. CJ Stroud, second most sacked quarterback of the season. There was
Mhm.
a stretch, Harley, where CJ Stroud faced a career high in pressures every time he dropped back to throw the football, and it was week after week after week after week. So I can see the Houston Texans spending a first round pick on a offensive lineman. However, when you look at someone like a Matthew Golden out of Texas, someone
Mhm.
like a Mecca Abuka out of Ohio State, that does intrigue you. And from what we've seen, wide receivers, that's almost like they have an easy transition to the NFL. They can be impactful as early as day one. We saw it with Brian Thomas Jr. Hey, we saw it here in Houston with Tank Dell. Every single year, there is a rookie wide receiver going crazy. And when you talk about players like Matthew Golden, you know him from U of H, and you
Yeah.
could go off on him in a second. But Emeka Abuka, precision route running,
Mm.
reliable hands, knowing how to attack a defense. That sounds like the exact type of wide receiver that is needed in this Nick Caley offense. When you look at Puka Nakua, when you look at Tutu Atwell, when you look at Cooper Cup, a great route running, reliable hands, knowing how and when to attack a defense, man. Emeka Ibuka would be my selection in the first round at pick 25. But you could definitely sell me on a Matthew Golden.
Oh, for sure. Matthew Golden, I loved watching him at UH. It was unfortunate he just never had a quarterback and an opportunity to compete at a high level here with the Houston Cougars. He had Donovan Smith and Clayton Tune at quarterback, and he was just not, producing the way that you would want him to, but you can tell that there was an athlete here in Matthew Golden who was the running mate of Tank Dell for a year or two here at U of H. So I was excited to see Matthew Golden actually leave the college and go to UT because I knew that him with a Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning, whichever way they went, Matthew Golden was going to produce. And yeah, he had himself a very solid season for the Longhorns. I'm a big fan of Golden and who he is. He's about 6 foot 185, I want to say, maybe 190.
Yeah,
But
195 is what it has here.
yeah, so I mean, nothing. That's not too bad. He's still gonna bulk a little bit more when he gets to the league. But him, Mecca Ibuka, I love as well too. I'm a big fan. I like the continuity that he could bring with C.J. Stroud from the Ohio State connection there. Igbuka's a slot guy. Like he produces heavily in the slot. He's a willing blocker. He has more of a wide receiver ready kind of build right now.
Mhm.
And I mean, he would fit in this scheme with the pre-snap motioning that Nick Caley could be utilizing here in Houston. That makes a lot of sense. You still have Trey Harris, Savion Williams, Jack Beck from TCU. Like there's other wide receivers as well in this draft that need to take a
Mhm.
deep look into what do the Texans really want, and Nick Caley's going to be the guy to help try to envision who does he want at the wide receiver class this year because Texans are going to draft a wide receiver. I
Yeah.
feel very confident that it doesn't matter if it's round one, at some point, they're drafting a wide receiver. We've seen enough of Mechie and Hutchinson. They've had their opportunities, and the production from both of them guys has been very below average. I mean, besides a random Hutch catch that you get in a game
Yeah,
here or
every now
there,
and then.
and and then the first half of the Detroit Lions game for John Mechie, that was it. You haven't
You know.
seen anything else from them guys.
And here's the thing. If they do have a draft selection where they pick a wide receiver in the first or second round, I would also hope they picked up a wide receiver in free agency also. The Houston
Yes.
Texans are that thin, ladies and gentlemen. You don't know whether or not Stephon Diggs is going to be back. More than likely, Tank Dell is not going to be playing football for you next year. And like Harley said, we have zero to little faith in John Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson. So, I'm just sick and tired of it's playoff season and there's only
Mhm.
number 12 out there. It's only Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz. That's about it. The Houston Texans desperately, man, need to invest in that wide receiver spot. So, let's say your favorite defensive tackle is available at 25. Either Matthew Golden or Emeka Ibuka are there at 25. Where are you going, Harley, if you are general manager Nick Casario? This is a tough one.
Fans are gonna disagree with me because I
Defensive
understand that
tackle.
the wide receiver position is something that is very gaudy to the eyes of Texans fans, any NFL fan. Premium positions always are provocative. It gets the people going.
Okay.
I'm going DT.
Oh, ooh.
Give me a DT. Give me a DT. Give me that just sounds scary because you're going, Harley, why do you want to do that? This defense was already elite last year. It doesn't matter, man. Like, you just never have enough talent amongst this defense. It just doesn't matter. Do you understand, ladies and gentlemen, what you could be creating here in Houston
Mm.
with the Philadelphia Eagles? And you look at their defensive line: Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and anything else in between. That defensive line was locked and loaded and ready to go to war against the Kansas City Chiefs. And they went out there, spear in hand, head in the other, and they dominated the Chiefs. And now everyone is going to try to duplicate this style. The Texans are right there. Anybody
Mhm.
asks, Luke Kuechly answered this on Kay Adams' podcast. What defense is closest to the Philadelphia Eagles? He said the Denver Broncos and the Houston Texans. You get
Mhm.
yourself a top of the line DT. You're telling me Walter Nolan is there at 25 and you
Kenneth
would
Grant.
pass him up? I would get Walter Nolan twice on Sundays, and D'Amico Ryans, he is making Foley Fatukasi, Tommy Toagai, Kurt Heinisch, making these little itty bitty guys that were cut candidates and making them look like solid football players. Now imagine what he could do with a blue chip talent like a Derek Harmon, like a Walter Nolan. I could go on and on about the
Okay.
defensive tackle position.
All right. So let's just hypothetically go defensive tackle at one. Second round pick, where you going? Now, I could go wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
However, I could also go safety. There's a lot of
Mm,
talent
mm,
at the safety
mm.
position this year.
Okay.
And if you're
Interesting.
gonna already be in this notion that I am building, one of the best defenses in the NFL, then why not add on to that? There is this really nice safety who our friend John Crumpler brought up today, Malachi Moore out of
Uh-huh.
Alabama. Great coverage skills. The Houston Texans can add themselves another safety because I have little to no faith in Jimmy Ward. I cannot rely on him to be there on Sunday. Having Kalen Bullock, a rookie, and Jalen Petrie as my safety group, man, I'm like John Gruden. I'm feeling very nicey. But, if someone like a Savion Williams is
Mm,
there out of TCU, if I'm not even gonna lie to you, if one of these tight ends are staring at me in the face, it's gonna be very hard for me not to
mm.
take a look at them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Wide receivers, you could go Savion Williams. You could go Jack Beck from TCU, who I'm a big fan of as well, too. Jalen Royals from Utah State, even though I don't see the
Tez
Texans.
Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, Tez Johnson's not a bad one either. Isaiah Bond from UT. There's some solid wide receivers later in these rounds, But man, tight ends are gonna be a fun one too. When you got a guy like Gunnar Helm from UT that could be available, someone else like Mason Taylor, Harold Fannin Jr. is starting to get
Mm,
the clout around Texans Twitter right now. I'm glad to see these guys looking at a Harold Fannin Jr., very underrated prospect at the tight end position. The Texans could go any which way they want. Tight end is just as important because guess who you just hired to be an OC? A former tight ends coach, Nick
yep.
Caley. And if he's looking at this group of tight ends that you got right now and he's going to go, all right, I could work with it, but I like to bring in somebody I would want, and if he sees somebody in this draft that he likes, then yeah, that's not a bad idea either, and then you got the offensive guard position. Now, I don't know what the Texans do via free agency. I
Mhm.
would love for them to improve the guard position in some way or fashion, but I still think they need another offensive lineman. I really do.
Yeah.
I'm very hesitant of, okay, we're just gonna pencil in Titus Howard. Well, okay, that's cool, but I still want another guard because I know Titus Howard isn't a natural guard. Now, maybe with a full off season of him knowing that he's going to be playing guard in a new offensive line scheme ish and protection sets, that maybe he gets his feet under him. Maybe he's a better guard than he is tackle. But I'm still a little worried about the left guard position. Not as much as right guard, though, as we all know that we got a gaping hole at right guard that just is just a black hole of death. The
It's
Texans'
horrible.
offensive line sucks.
We could be
And
there.
so I mean, when you got a Tate Ratledge, maybe that could be available there. A second round pick's not so bad. I don't think Marcus and Bow from Purdue will be there. I would love for him to be there. Tyler Booker has been a guy that's starting to fall a little bit, and I haven't really looked into why. I'm very curious as to why, because Tyler Booker is an absolute dude. I don't expect him in the second round to be there, but if he is in the vicinity, I would look at trading up to go get a Tyler Booker if he falls far enough, and you do your due diligence and look up the context if he's okay injury wise or whatnot.
Uh,
But I don't know, man. I'm torn on this one. Wide receiver, guard, tight end. I'm pretty happy with either which way.
I would have to agree here. I wouldn't mind if you do, make that trade up for a Tyler Booker
It'd be
if he
fun.
falls there. You got to invest in a CJ Stroud. And the O line is the foundation of the offense. We've seen it with Deshaun Watson. We've seen it with David Carr. Can we not see it with CJ Stroud? Can we see CJ Stroud with time to operate? And it doesn't matter who's out there at a wide receiver. CJ Stroud is going to get you the football. I wouldn't mind taking an O lineman here in the second round. Now, in the third round, here's where we could get nasty because one of these running backs could be very exciting, right? With a Scatterboo, would that excite you somehow in the
Yeah,
third round? It would. Imagine Joe Mixon and Scatterboo. That would
big
excite
time,
you. That I
big
mean,
time.
you're talking about, and then him running behind a new right guard in Tyler Booker. What? Hey, you know what? Oh, what about a center, man?
Yeah,
We have
I
not
don't
had a
mind the
center
center.
since Chris Myers.
I just have this idea that the Texans are going to go full in on Juice Scruggs at center.
That
I,
doesn't
I
excite me.
can't get that out of my head. And I feel like I think the Texans' mindset is okay, he's not going to be the center calling out the mic and calling out the protection sets and whether or not they need to shift left or shift right or if there's a stunt incoming. Like, no, he's not responsible for that now. The guy behind us in the background, number 7, CJ Stroud, is now going to be responsible for protection sets and calling out the mic, and at least that's what we're told
Mhm.
from or implied from Nick Cayley and as well as the rest of the media members that have been implying this too. So I think because of that responsibility being fallen off his shoulders, he could solely focus on being a better center at pass blocking and run blocking. I think the Texans are just going to lean with Juice Scruggs at center.
Oh, that just doesn't excite me at all. But trial
Him and
by
Jared
error.
Patterson.
Oh my, I mean, it's just been a rotating door at center, man. You
Yeah.
know, like I said, you haven't had one since Chris Myers. But in the third round, man, I can see the Houston Texans going anywhere they want to. It would not shock me if they look at one of these wide receivers who is falling and take a chance on one of these tight ends, right? The tight end from Miami is getting a
Yeah.
lot of love, as a potential, third round prospect. His name is Elijah Arroyo, and they said
Yeah.
all he needs is coaching. Well, your new OC, like you
Who
mentioned,
better?
is a tight ends coach, and what did he said? I love tight ends.
Yeah. Yeah, he said that twice
Yeah.
in his 4 sentences about that question. Yeah, I would not mind Elijah Arroyo. I know it came out today that he had a little minor injury stemming from the
Mhm.
Senior Bowl, so he wasn't going to be able to compete, I believe, at the combine, but he will still work out on his pro day. So I am intrigued about Elijah Arroyo very much so. I love these running backs, man. I
Oof.
really do. I love me a Trevor Etienne. I like Travion Henderson. You mentioned Cam Scatterbo. I don't know if Caleb Johnson from Iowa is still there in the third round. Probably not. But damn, he looks amazing. There's numerous running backs here in this draft that the Texans need. They need to attack the running back position this draft. They need to. I don't know if it's in the third round, but at some point in this draft, before the fourth round, they need to attack the running back position. I don't want no sixth round Jawar Jordan. Like, give me a legitimate guy. Give me a Trevor Etienne. That's what I want. He
Yeah,
fits perfect with Nick Haley.
absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time that you have us here today. That is Harley. I am Ruben. We are just days away from the NFL Combine. We are weeks away from NFL free agency. And, blink and we'll be at the NFL draft. Take another blink, we'll be at training camp. And one final blink, and we'll be week one. With that being
Mm.
said, guys, do us a favor. Have a real blessed rest of your day. We will see you on Wednesday.